I noticed there was a difference. Last year wasn't
as breezy and
it
dry.
wasn't as breezy as usual.
This year.
So some experts also alluded to the fact that maybe it's because of the change in the pattern of weather and all of that, which is not far from the whole conversation about climate change, global warming, and the rest of that. But thankfully, we are feeling the hammer time this time around. I hope it doesn't get more cooler than it is right now. Yes, well, thank you so much for joining us on the program. For our first timers, we welcome you specially. We want you to join us every weekday on Mondays to Fridays, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. as we take perspectives on happenings around the country. Today on the show, we'll be looking at security situation in the country. As you may be aware, the editorial of the Daily Trust newspaper yesterday, Sunday, caused some kind of I would say
upheaval. I actually like the title, life has lost its value under Buhari's Nigeria. It's quite a very catchy headline there.
Yes. Which is a fact, really, if you look at the spate of killings, around
so
the
much
country,
happening at the same
especially
time.
in the northern part of the country. Yeah. So we'll be joined by security expert Dr. Yahuza Ahmed, who will be giving us perspectives on the responses, both from members of the public and even from the presidency. And also we'll be discussing the approval of the president for 5% employment opportunity for people with disability. This is also a very important conversation on the program today. As usual, we'll be taking a look at the dailies on Daybreak. And we have in the studio Suleiman, the Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Daily Trust newspaper. He'll be giving us perspectives on the stories that made the headlines. Well, for now, I guess we'll take a look at the events of 13th of December in world history. Remember, those who do not know history are doomed to repeat it. But again, what do we say to those who know history and yet repeat it? That's a question for you to answer. But for now, let's take a quick break and look at history. Stay with us. Well, there you have it today in history. Very, very interesting and important facts in our world history. But, I want us to talk about something that happened in Nigeria today in history. And that's talking about the escape of General Oladipo Dia, who was the Chief General Staff back in 1997 from a bomb explosion at the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport. Recall that there was this, whether rumor, whether it was a fact, about the plan by, the general to lead others to stage a coup against the then Sani Abacha back then. He was the chief, more like a vice president at the time between 1993 to 1997. So there was this attempt on his life, an assassination attempt on his life, and then he narrowly escaped that in 1993. So a lot of debate about his relationship with the then General Sani Abacha. In fact, he was even sentenced to death.
Yeah.
After he was court-martialed, yes, and then somehow I would say fate seemed to be on his side. It was in his favor, because the person that was responsible for sending him to death by hanging died, along the line. And
Tragic.
So that was not prosecuted. That was not, I would say, executed. That plan. So I would say he narrowly escaped death, and he's still alive. Very, very interesting.
You have quite a number of stories to tell, with the number of events that happened in the course of history, and all of that.
Yes, and if you're talking about military politics, I'm sure he's someone that, can tell you a whole lot, as far as that is concerned. Well, that stood out for me, and I thought to, point that out. Well, let's take a look at the dailies now on the Daybreak, talking about today. We've talked about the past. Today, we'll be looking at all the stories that made the headlines briefly after this breather. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust Television, reaching you live from our studios here in the nation's capital city of Abuja. Right about now, let's take a look at some of the stories that made the headlines on our dailies this morning. We're starting with the Daily Trust newspaper. The lead story there on page 5, you'd see passengers stranded over fresh Nigeria-UAE row. The riders, agents, travelers count losses. Stakeholders commend federal government's tit-for-tat, seek review of pacts. Another rider states federal government reciprocates travel ban against UK, Canada, and Saudi. And on page 17, you'd see subsidy. Daily Trust economists seek injection of 2 trillion naira in education, health. And still on page 5, you'd find what Buhari is doing to tackle insecurity. That's according to presidency, and this is following, a response to an editorial that was put out by the Daily Trust. Now, you'd also see on page 8, pandemonium as kidnappers invade Taraba market, abduct traders, yet another kidnapping incident. And on page 6, you'd see reactions as Dora Emirate turbans Buhari's son. Page 21 states 188 million transactions recorded on eNaira platform. NFF sacks Raw, appoints Ugevon interim Super Eagles boss. And on page 8, you'd find email monarchs abducted, palaces set on fire. Tragic. These are some of the stories on the Daily Trust newspaper.
All right, now let's take a look at the Punch newspaper this morning, where you have quite, a number of stories there. The lead story says, we won't reverse travel ban on FG's threat. That's according to the UK government. And the riders there says, press statement on travel ban stands despite FG's planned retaliation. That's according to the High Commission. UK, others lack moral rights to allow their airlines to come to Nigeria, says Aviation Minister. We have recommended travel ban for Canada, United Kingdom, Saudi Arabia, others. Well, you'd also see some other interesting stories there, talking about the first one at the very top. Over 500 million pushed into extreme poverty over healthcare cost. That's according to World Bank and WHO reports. You'd find that on page 23. The next story, COVID-19 infections rise by 326.67% in 1 week. Nigerians shun safety rules. Court stops trial of ex-army chief, others over 13.8 billion naira fraud. Reps invite Malami Adebayo FRS as controversy emerges over tax holidays. Also, below the pictorial there, you would see the stories. Ghanaian, 2 Nigerians nabbed with 10 kilogram cocaine, 1 million tramadol capsules seized. You would see also wife bolts door as Ogun pastor allegedly rapes teenage chorister couple arrested. Kogi drags EFCC to court over controversial 19.3 billion naira fund, demands 35 billion naira. I thought we had through that, but yeah, here we go
are.
All right, well, those are the stories that made the headlines on the Punch this morning.
Okay, let's take a look at some of the stories on the Nation newspaper. The lead story there, Omicron, federal government to ban flights from UK, Canada. The riders, Saudi Arabia, Argentina, UAE on red list. Another rider states diplomats back retaliatory action. And on page 8 of the Nation newspaper, you'd find Buhari, Makinde, Obasanjo, Tinubu mourn as Seun dies at 95. And on page 7, you'd see PDP, APC trade words over 2023 polls. Wiki sets agenda for IU. And on page 5 of the Nation newspaper, Kogi sues EFCC over 9.3 billion naira bailout saga. Bankers invest 40 billion naira in National Theatre. You also see EFCC probes governor for withdrawing 60 billion naira. That's huge. So these are some of the lead stories of the Nation newspaper.
All right, finally on The Guardian. The lead story says over 77 billion naira loans, bad governance kill Agri-Bank. With the rider, Bank MD admits failure of ABP loans as recapitalization fails. You'd also see BPE affirms BOA unviable, difficult to recapitalize. Well, the other stories there beside the pictorial shows you the story about FG to place UK, Canada, Saudi Arabia, others on red list today. And then other stories at the top. Nigeria will not break up, says PDP chairman. You find that on page 4. Kogi drags EFCC to court over alleged hidden 19.3 billion naira, demands 35 billion naira damages. No future in APC, PDP for Southeast, says Okore. And then you would see also NFF terminates Raw's appointment, makes Egovan Eagles interim coach. These are the stories that made the headlines this morning on the papers. Now let's get some perspectives on these stories. Like we told you, we have the Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Daily Trust newspaper, and also the Chairman, Editorial Board, Daily Trust newspaper, also at the same time, giving us perspectives on this. So if you're wondering who is behind the story about the editorial yesterday, he is the chairman of that board. So, well, we'll be talking about other stories that also got our attention this morning. Talking about the travel restrictions. It's all over the newspapers. The Daily Trust leads with the story, passengers stranded over fresh Nigeria UAE row. Quite a lot of back and forth. We are seeing also reactions that are following this, some in favor, some not in favor of this. Are we making the right moves?
Well, but it's interesting that all the newspapers were leading with it, except of course The Guardian.
Right.
So I was more interested in The Guardian story because the others are going the same way. But it's a non-issue actually. Non-issue in the sense that it only demonstrates once again the kind of how we approach other countries, how we understand the world. We have this, when it comes to international affairs, I think that Nigeria has an inward thinking mentality. we always feel that the way we understand issues between us and other countries, that's how people and governments in other parts of the world do. All our newspapers are talking about this. I doubt if there's a single newspaper in the UAE that is talking about this right now. You can see it.
Right.
Or if there's a single newspaper in the UK that is talking about this in relation to Nigeria specifically, or if there's a single newspaper in Canada that is talking about this issue in relation to Nigeria specifically. That is the measure of our importance. We are importance in international affairs. We are not important. We just think that we are. And that thinking is largely internal, not only to us. Just like, I was speaking with the South African ambassador the other day, and he was saying that it's only in Nigeria that we know that Nigeria helped South Africa, during apartheid. South Africans, they are not aware. So it's exactly the same thing, Nigeria has, UAE, the Emirates has 21 flights, between Nigeria and Dubai. Air Peace has 4 only. You understand? Because that's the structural issue at stake, So even that 21 that Emirates has, if you compare it to all the flights that it has in all its fleet as a business, or even as a national carrier of the UAE, it amounts to 0, to nothing. That 4 that Air Peace has is so important to us. That's why our government is putting it on head on behalf of Air Peace. It just reflects how unserious we are. And we really need to understand how the world works. You understand? If you look at, I have traveled London to Abuja or London to Lagos more than 50 times on different airlines, and I can tell you what happens. 100% of the time. Well, there was a time you had Arik Air and Medview. These ones were pretending to be Nigerian airline and Nigerian airline. Most of them don't own aircraft of their own. They lease from other countries. So half or more than half of the profits go to these other countries, So what do you need? You need a strong airline or strong airlines. You don't need to have Air Peace, Medview, Dana. You don't need 20, 30 different airlines. You need 2 or 3 that are strong and viable and which can compete not only for space, not only domestically, but also on international flights. You understand? If you look at the BA has a flight from Abuja to London every day, twice. Abuja to London, London back, and then from Lagos to London, and then Lagos to London, London back to Lagos. Someone once told me that of Lagos is even twice. I'm aware of one. So there's hardly a time that you go on that flight that is not filled up. You understand? The economy, the business class, and even the first class.
So in other words, you are saying that this is the wrong move for Nigeria? Is that what you're saying?
The thing is, it is showing the wrong moves of the past, the cumulative wrong moves of the past. That what we needed to have done, to have had a strong airline that can compete with other airlines, so that even if the UAE cancel Nigeria's flights, that airline will not feel anything. You understand? If the Emirates, the 21 flights, it's Nigerians that are going. It's majority Nigerians that are coming as well. There are not many UAE people coming here or living here.
So Nigeria is more at lost.
Exactly, that's the point, because we have put ourselves at a weakened position in relation to other countries by not doing the things we ought to have done to strengthen ourselves, and largely because of noise making such as the one you're saying.
No, I think I would like to talk, editorially. Other newspapers, the Daily Trust, the Punch, and the Nation are leading with similar stories, but the Guardian decided to lead with a different story. In your opinion, why did they choose that as a priority?
That's a brilliant question. I don't think they probably knew that other newspapers are going to lead with the Omicron issue, but editors have that feel of news, on a daily basis. They have an idea of what other newsrooms will be thinking. So everyone knows that Omicron and the so-called row between Nigeria and the UAE is no row at all. You know, row is equal. Both sides think the same. You know, there's no row here because I don't think the UAE cares or is even aware that we think that we are in a row with them. You understand? You know, so that's not a row. So reporting it as if is even not right in the first place. So the people in the Guardian probably weren't thinking. Probably they chanced upon a story, an exclusive about the Bank of Agric, and as you can see, it looks like a story in which they had taken initiative to report themselves. But of course, I'm not here to promote the Guardian.
All right, now let's also just talk more about this travel thing. Do you see this as something that is probably demonstrating the need why we should have, you know, a national carrier in Nigeria?
There are many things here involved. There is culture. You understand? For example, if you fly on British Airways, the flight is 95% filled by Nigerians, or 75–80%. The same on Virgin Atlantic, the same on KLM, the same on Lufthansa, the same on Air France, the same on many of these different carriers. And yet, they will serve you European food. That's a cultural statement there. You know that why if the bulk of the passengers are Nigerians, there should be Nigerian menu on the flight. That's the cultural one. There's also the economic one. The fact that we don't have aircraft or carriers that can actually compete. For example, how much people are just fighting over 10,000 naira from Lagos to Kano, from Lagos to Maiduguri, Abuja to Sokoto, Abuja to Lagos, and so on and so forth. How much does that entail? Maybe the cost of a business flight for one person from London to Abuja or Abuja to London will more than cover 20 people from Lagos, or 30 people, or even 50 people from Lagos to Kaduna. So all our aircraft are busy fighting over the domestic crumbs, whereas the entirety of international flights in Nigeria is left for the carriers of other countries. The businesses, the aviation businesses of other countries. And we think that makes sense. You know, and that's what leads to the international dimension, international affairs or international politics dimension of it. You don't participate actively in world affairs unless you are strong at home. In every sector. In this sector, we're not strong. You know, Air Peace probably after a few years, because we've seen that before with Arik Air when it was having international flights, and then after a few years it went down again because they are not strong individually. So instead of even thinking of bringing Air Nigeria back, why not support these ones to merge, like you merge the banks, so that you have 2 or 3 of them, and then they can be having direct flights to Istanbul, direct flight to London, to Frankfurt, you understand, you know, to many different countries, and they are Nigerians, and then jobs will be created, and then the economy grows.
You know, in November, the Minister of Aviation announced that Nigeria Air will be lifting in April of 2022. Do you think this is going to change anything for us?
I think the change is I don't know, and I cannot tell, but the entirety of Air Nigeria looks like a scam to me. And I'm being honest, that's exactly what I feel. Why do I say it looks like a scam? If you look at it, it says that 5% will belong to government, 49% will belong to Nigerian, domestic entrepreneurs, investors like you and me. If you have the money, I don't, and then it's not bad not to have the money, but it's also not bad to have the money. It's fine. And then the last part, I think 45% will belong to international or foreign investors, and we don't know more than that yet, and we're just a few months from April. We need to know who are the what they call 49%, domestic investors, because sometimes they will say domestic investors or whatever, and it's just one person or 2 people fronting, or someone fronting for someone else in government. This is key in Nigeria. So we need more information, more transparency on that issue, and then also who are the foreign investors. But the key question is that if government is going to have only 5% of stakes in Air Nigeria, why are we even bothering about it? Why do we even have to spend government money? Just imagine, government has already spent over 9 billion on consultancy fees alone. You understand? And then only in the end to come and own 5% of stakes in it. Why do we have to bother? You can just as well leave it to these private sector organizations to put up all the money and you know, to put up the Air Nigeria. So it smells to me as a newsman, you know, like a scam, and we really need to find to dig deeper into it.
Right. All right. Let's take on other stories now. We have a reaction from the presidency following the Daily Trust editorial from yesterday, and this one here we're seeing what Buhari is doing to tackle insecurity, apparently as a response to that editorial, talking about how lives, you know, have lost their value in Nigeria under the president's watch. Now, what's your, I would say, response to the response?
Well, I don't know if I should respond personally, because it's an editorial board. I'm only the chairman of the editorial, so I only chair the discussions and guide the discussions and do that. But what I want to say is that the board, you know, the process, and I'm sure the people in the presidency know, the process is entirely objective and fair. We make a list of issues that we consider are most important at that time, and then we discuss them very, very robustly. We have members not only from within the newspaper, but throughout the country and beyond. In fact, we have a hybrid system now. Lots of people join us from the US, from the UK, you know, Nigerians in diaspora who can contribute to discussions on any issue on the planet, you know. So our discussions tend to be quite enriched, quite robust. And on this particular editorial, I remember the discussions were quite fierce. You know, people felt very strongly about what has been going on and about the government's response to it, and that came out, and happily it came out well in the editorial. So my response is, well, if the government had done the things that they needed to do in the first place, probably would have had a different editorial. But more importantly, probably the incidents that generated the editorial in the first place would not have happened, you know. So it's not just about what government is doing, but how Nigerians are feeling what government is doing. That is important.
Well, one of the responses, if I may just highlight, is the fact that the presidency is you know, saying that Nigeria's situation or Nigeria's case is not peculiar, it's not unique. Rightfully so, if you look at, you know, other trends in, you know, other African countries, Burkina Faso, you know, Mali, and the rest of them. But then again, others will say, isn't that, you know, more like an SKP kind of, you know?
Well, there's truth in that. There's truth in that. But where that truth relates to is not the specific issue for which the editorial is about. You know, there's truth in the fact that certain events are epochal, meaning that they happen, they spread across a period. Therefore, the place is insignificant. You understand? Terrorism, you know, is one such event. You know, it's something that has been happening in many countries of the world in the last 20 years or so. So that you can say that that's epochal. You know, he can say that it's not specific to Nigeria and so on. There's truth in that. There's also, you know, the one key driver of these issues, you know, climate change. It's affecting the countries that he mentions. You know, the countries in the Lake Chad basin, but also places like Mali, you know, Burkina Faso and all. If you look at, they are similar in vegetation and climate to the areas where these things are happening. So that driver is there to that extent. So that's a fair comment. But that by itself does not mean that we should happily accept it or watch that thing should infest. Nobody is complaining, and even the editorial admitted it, that these are complex issues, and their own response even admitted the admittance of the editorial, that these are complex issues. It is the response, the nonchalance attitude of the government it doesn't bother me as much as you think. Attitude of the government that people are complaining. That's what people are angry about, because that's what is making things worse. This thing started much at a lower scale. Now we've got to a stage where bandits can shoot down airplanes, where they can tax whole communities.
Where they have choppers landing in bushes.
Well, that one is fake news.
I'm really interested, talking about nonchalancy. There's this story that really caught my attention about reaction as Emirate Turban's Buhari's son. Well, some would say there's so much upheaval in the country, and they're talking about
there's nothing wrong with that. Please, the thing is this: we have to be very tolerant as a society. That tolerance is important in solving problems of violence. You understand?
Right.
If the emir is turbaning the president's son, Yusuf, I don't know if that's the name, if he has more children, I don't know. The man should not in any way have to explain the actions of his father as president. These are two different things. You understand? I know that he's been turbaned because he's Buhari's son. Yes, you understand? But I don't see the connection between that and So I'm happy for the young man for the turban. I don't see that means that because we are angry with Buhari, and I am angry with the president. That column at the back page is mine. You read it, you show that I am angry with the president. But that doesn't mean that the son should not be turbaned by anyone who wants to.
Okay,
Right.
well, we'll look more, more on that, about the insecurity and all of that, and the different dimensions to it. But another one closely related is another one that the Daily Trust economists, are seeking injection of 2 trillion naira in the education, health, and health sector. That's as regards the fuel subsidy, conversation. The government, of course, is proposing that 2.4 trillion naira, as something that will cushion the effect of the removal of the subsidy and all of that. And as part of the response with regards to the issue of insecurity, the government have also said that, look, we are also focusing on other areas, non-violent solutions, to this crisis by looking at maybe infrastructure and all of that. So if you place this side by side, are we having a sustainable kind of an approach, to doing that?
I think if we work, I think it's sustainable and it's something that can work. If, and unfortunately in our case in Nigeria, it's a big if we're faithful in implementing these ideas, certainly there is no amount of force that you can use that will solve the problem of Boko Haram or banditry or any of the other forms of violence that we have in this country. It is just unfortunate that the discourse around violence in the country has been pushed and driven by a Pentecostal attitude. What do I mean by a Pentecostal attitude? A Pentecostal attitude that which sees no room, for meeting point, between diverse groups in the country. So the only discourse that is acceptable is force and violence. Kill them, kill them, kill them, kill them. That's not gonna work. We have done it for 10 years. It has not worked. So maybe it's time that we start thinking that, and even in the editorial, it was clear that we know force alone cannot solve the complexity, such a complex issue. So if you have infrastructure and injection of education and health, that can help. But please, what is necessary the most because this health, education and all that, they have an impact, but their impact are long-term impacts. What you need is an immediate short gap or short-term measure that will draw millions and thousands of young people away from the streets into productive employment. You get what I'm saying? Where people will have jobs, where people will have incomes, where people will have homes, or at least dreams of homes.
How can the government achieve that? If you look at, the social investment programs that government has initiated, it's all part of, efforts to, change these narratives and to have more young people engaged, having something to do and all of that. So all these social,
believe me, is the easiest. Government
effectiveness and efficiency. Okay. Is that working?
No, believe me, it's not difficult as it appears. Government can ask people to come and dig holes and pay them for digging holes. And then after they are finished digging holes, pay them again to fill the holes back. Just to get them to do something and earn income for doing something. So don't tell me that it's difficult. It's difficult only to the extent that people's imagination allows them. That's one. You know, government has the capacity to create employment immediately, but we are shackled by ideas that think that all of these things have to come from somewhere called market. It doesn't. The state can be the lead as well. So that's one. Secondly, you talked about inefficiency and so on. I agree, unfortunately, but part of the reason for that is the discourse around this issue side. Is a poverty alleviation. If I want to do poverty alleviation for you, in a way I'm saying that you should remain poor, but the effects of the poverty should be slightly alleviated. That's the point. So the thinking from day one is not to remove poverty from individuals or from society as a whole, collectively. The thinking is, okay, let's give them a kekena pep. Let's give them, you get what I'm saying, let's give them something that will, you know, palliative, something that will alleviate the pain. Temporarily, but which will not, like you said, sustain, will not lead to any, you know, long-term sustenance. So if you change that thinking, then maybe you now have room in your head to start thinking that, wow, I can, if I wanted to say, if I say, just for a mention that, if we say that, let us have, for example, 50,000 housing units in each state of the Federation. The population to erect this one is there. You can say that those ones should even be built by mud, which you have more than enough in every part of the country. You understand? Even if the houses break down and all that, it doesn't matter. What matters is that people are working. You understand? And they're earning income from the work that they do.
All right. Well, looks like we have to end discussion here.
A lot to say, really, but we have to end it at this point.
Yeah, me too. That's all right. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to having you again on the program.
As usual.
Yes, we've been speaking with Suleiman, Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Daily Trust newspaper, and also the Chairman, Editorial Board, Daily Trust. We'll now take a short break, and then when we come back, we'll look at other issues on the program. You don't want to miss the rest of the program. Please stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that look at this,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
All right, welcome back. If you are just joining us, this is Daybreak on Trust TV. Now, the Daily Trust editorial on Sunday wrote, in a space of just 2 days last week, 23 travelers heading to Kaduna were burnt alive in a commercial bus at Sabamburni, Sokoto State. No fewer than 15 worshippers killed as they prayed in a mosque at Baari village, Mashegu local government area of Niger State. And also a commissioner in the service of Katsina State, Dr. Rabi Nasser, was gruesomely murdered in his own house located at Fatima Shema quarters in Katsina City, while a housewife identified as Salamatu was killed as bandits abducted 6 others during a raid at Puri community in Kwali Area Council of Abuja. Welcome to Northern Nigeria, Chuka 2021, where life has seemingly lost its value under a president voted en masse 5 times by the same populace. In a swift reaction, the President Muhammadu Buhari-led administration has described as lurid political journalism and editorial criticizing the administration's handling of Nigeria's security situation. And now to give us some perspectives, we have in the studio Dr. Yahuza Ahmed Gezo to give us a security consultant to give us perspectives on this issue. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure. Good morning.
Well, let's begin by saying that assuming you've read the editorial titled "Life Has Lost Its Value" on the Buhari's watch, let's get your thoughts first around that editorial.
Well, I think it's not that I think the editorial have done justice to President Muhammad Buhari's government, and as far as I'm concerned, it's a fair assessment. It was so just, it was so elaborate, and it speaks a kind of guidance, a policy guidance to Buhari administration, not even to look at it in any perspective of political load or whatever as described by the response from the presidency. So as far as I'm concerned, the editorial made was really perfect, and it speaks to the language of what is happening. Because as she mentioned in the pre-presentation, just before you asked the question, the review she made for a number of places that people were kidnapped. Even on the day when the commissioner was discovered, that was on Wednesday, he was assassinated on Wednesday. And on Thursday evening, when his guard, his mate, realized that he didn't see him coming out to the office, he now raised alarm when the ADC came to ask that we didn't see the commissioner in the office. So that was when it was realized that something is wrong, and they checked and realized that his corpse was lying down in a toilet after being assassinated. But that one aside, because that one has no relationship with banditry. We know there are issues. The security operatives are doing their work, so I don't want to go into any discussion on that. But as far as we are concerned, we believe sincerely and honestly it is a personal vendetta, and it is an assassination, and it has no relationship, no iota of relationship to do with banditry and other issues of insecurity that is hammering the northern part of the country. But on the same night, when his corpse was removed and taken to Federal Medical Center, Katsina, the same night the bandits arrived at Safana and they committed a lot of atrocities. Was it reported? Is it part of what you discussed now in your presentation? So there are many other couple of unreported pocket attacks that has been going on, not only in Niger, even in Kaduna, even in Zamfara, even in many other parts of Sokoto, and to some extent probably some part of the neighborhood of Kano, and probably some part of the neighborhood of even the Niger Republic between the border. Because these are a couple of activities of the bandits and those who carried arm. Either they are Fulani, either they are Gobirawa, either they are Yoruba. Because as far as I'm concerned, it's a syndicate.
Okay.
Because there are what is called Mbanga, who are now busy killing Fulani. So anybody who is found to be a Fulani man is going to be killed and assassinated, which I think we are creating a new problem that will provoke another trouble for Nigeria's security in the next 20 to 30 years.
Okay.
Because there is no community in Nigeria, no two tribes that have been together in the last 600 years without much conflict that only occur during the cultivation period in most cases. Herders, farmers clashes, that is between Hausa and Fulani. But now, from what is happening, from what the government allowed to be in some of the states, or in almost all the affected states, where the so-called vigilante or the Mbanga, whatever name you give them, they normally go and assassinate Fulani, and whenever they see a Fulani man in a car, they remove him and slaughter him. To some extent, we have so many evidences in Bakuri local government, in Paskari local government, in Sabo local government, and even in some part of Zamfara, Sokoto, and other states. So we are creating a serious ethnic problem that will be provoked, or that will manifest in the later after 30 or 20 years or thereabout.
Okay, the presidency has reacted to that editorial, saying the issue of insecurity is not just peculiar to Nigeria, but in other climes.
Accepted. But what is the mandate of the government? The mandate of the government, one of the key mandate of the government, as far as constitution is concerned, even though I'm not a legal person, I'm a security intelligence and investigation expert, so I have nothing to do with knowledge, to do with background of a legal background. But from the perspective of what I have had, from the quotations made by the lawyers, those who are in the field, those who have the knowledge, those who have the practice, they have made mention that when a government cannot afford to protect life, property, and dignity and personality of the people, when the government failed to provide security and safety, you can even call that there is no government to some extent. So in a situation whereby now the issue is, you have Damuna in Zamfara state, you have what do you call him, Turji in Sokoto and Zamfara state, you have Dogo Gide in Sokoto, Niger, Zamfara, and part of Kebbi state, you have Adamu Aleru, you have many other of them who are commanders. You have some of the commanders that have been killed in the operations. So now the question is, this number of commanders, these commanders I mentioned, each and every one of them, there was a time they have given an ultimatum to the government, or they changed the authorities, they took over the authority of the government, like that of this Turji. He took over the authority of the leadership, the mantle of the leadership of local government chairman of Shinkafi local government in Zamfara state, and part of Zurmi local government in Zamfara state, Isa, Sabambuni, part of Goronyo and other Gobir area, as we have heard that the Gobir community leadership have written the president and also sent a note to even the United Nations, calling for coming to their aid, or rather they stand to be loyal and pay allegiance to Turji. So these have given three questions. It's three-dimensional questions or triangular questions. I cannot even call them dimensional. They are triangular because each of them stands on its own. So when you have a triangle, each one stand on its own. One, the sovereignty of Nigeria is in question. Two, respect, dignity of Nigeria in the faces of bilateral and regional organizations like Economic Community of West African States, like African Union, like European Union, or whatever you have, is putting Nigeria's sovereignty in question because of the activities of these guys I mentioned. And there are many others, not only in northern Nigeria. This is happening in some other part of the southern part of the country. So that is why even the protests we are not regional bigots. We are not ethno bigot, but rather we are nationalists. That is why we advocated and we made a clarion call asking the government to sit off its responsibility. Many northerners, we have the list of northern people that have been assassinated by south and southeast eastern people, the ESN and others. We have the list for those who were killed in January, February, up to December. So, and we need that bloodshed to stop. Because we don't want to start. We don't want people in the northern part of the country to start killing anybody. Now we're not interested in that.
It's not like we do not have security forces on ground that
Yes.
are, you know, putting their lives on the line to make sure that safety and peace is maintained and all of that. Again, so in its response, the presidency says, look, we have a military that is on ground and they are doing their best, you know, to make sure that we overcome this, but that they are overstretched, you know, in discharging their responsibilities. They are now, you know, virtually in every state and all of that, you know, trying to ensure that there is safety and all of that. What would be your reaction to that?
I appreciate that. And I commend the effort and the contribution and the activities of the military and other security operatives. We know they are doing their best, but they are handcuffed. Why? Because they are not up to 18% of the requirement in terms of number. Many have been retiring, many are retiring by day. Many are being killed by day. Many have been ambushed and assassinated in the last 6 years of Muhammad Buhari administration. How many times have Muhammad Buhari administration made an employment of security personnel? What we are saying, look, you know, we are advocate for peace, security and justice as well as good governance, and we believe that Nigeria is ours and Muhammad Buhari is part of Nigerians, and he has a tenure that will last in the maximum of next 1,000 days. If at all the number of days is up to 1,000, if at all it is up to 1,000. So when the tenure lasts, definitely Muhammad Buhari and all the people around him will come back to drawing board. They will be like me and like you. Who knows that either tomorrow you or her can be the president of those countries. So what we are saying is, do what is right. We have huge number of unemployed, agile, patriotic, enthusiastic youth that are much available in all the areas and all the locations. So if Muhammad Buhari government is really serious and really have the concern, and it's a serious government, and it want to take its mantle of leadership of some sovereign state, because as far as I'm concerned, Nigeria's sovereignty is in question. For so many evidences I have highlighted and many others that time may not permit us. I'm coming. So if at all they want to do, what we are suggesting is, why can't they employ minimum of 40 per polling unit, 40 youths between the age of 17 to the age of 22 or 24. We have so many of them. Those who are educated, you train them in the institutions using the modern capacity and whatever. Those who are not educated, you take them, probably you teach them whatever, the same theology and the same strategy that was used during the pre-colonial administration and even during the colonial administration and even the engagement during when the Biafra war was conducted. So if you have 10 political words and you engage 10 polling units in a political ward and you engage 40 per polling unit times 10, it will give you 400. And if you have 10 political words in the local government, multiply 400 times 10, it will give you 4,000. So if you have youth that are agile, they are even anxious. We have many of them that are anxious. They are qualified in terms of qualification. Some of them have NCE, some of them have HND, some of them are graduates, many of them are graduates. We have been producing graduates without creating a job for them. Okay. And they are ready to do it. Okay. So if you can take, let's assume that we know that we have 774 local governments in the country as Nigerian state. So let's assume that you take only 500. So 4,000 times 500, you distribute them into DSS, into Navy, into Army, into Air Force, into Custom, and all the security operatives, and see what will happen.
Okay, now let's take a look at this video, you know, quite really very sad and emotional at the same time. The video went viral on social media, you know, about a kidnapped victim, a lady, actually a mother, you know, who was brutally raped, you know, in the hands of these bandits, and the video went everywhere on social media. But take a look at it. Let's
also warn you that the video you're about to watch can be a bit emotionally disturbing, so viewer discretion is highly advised in this sense. Take a look.
I saw horror. Wallahi tallahi idan abu yana kama da yawm al-qiyamah. Allah ina gana gan shi when I was in captivity. I saw that. I saw horror. I still have nightmares, bad nightmares that say an rike ni har yau har gobe akan horrors din da na gani. Akan horrors din da na gani. That's why I left Nigeria. That's why I'm here. But wallahi tallahi, if you have not been through what we've been through, a lot of us that have been in captivity and been raped multiple times by terrorists, you would not know. You would not know the pain. You would not know the agony. Nobody stood. Nobody believed me. Nobody said anything. Nobody helped me. No one. No one. And that's what's happening right now to our children. That's what's happening right now to our children. They're being killed. Nobody's believing them. Nobody's saying anything. Nobody's accepting any refugee from northern Nigeria. Nobody. I was raped. I was raped. I was raped by terrorists. I was raped. I was beaten. I still have marks on my arm. I know what's going on. I know the pain. I know the pain.
La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah.
Okay, you know, when I watched that video, I cried. I actually cried, and this actually puts a human face, you know, to the whole victimization of being.
I have seen worse scenarios.
So when you talk about,
I've seen worse scenario than this in the course of investigation or research.
So
I have been to the field because I used to every 3 months I used to select minimum of 40 local governments in 7 states, combining of northeast, north central, northwest, and to some extent southern part of the country. So I used to go to the field, and I have seen worse than this.
Okay, so you know, one other area that the editorial of the Daily Trust captures is the seeming lack of empathy, you know, demonstrated by the presidency, the body language, you know, of the president towards, you know, these incidents of attack here and there. For instance, the most recent instance that many people are, you know, using is the fact that you just in the wake of an attack somewhere in Sokoto where a lot of people were burnt, the president was on his way somewhere in Lagos where he attended a group lunch and all of that. So when you take that emotional angle, you know, to things, do you think that we're seeing enough body language to reassure Nigerians and to give them some sense of belonging or some kind of confidence that government really cares, you know, about what is going on?
You know, when you are talking about a government really care, or really government knows that there are other people beside the people within the cycle of the power. In Nigeria, as far as I'm concerned, I condemned Muhammad Buhari and his administration in totality. And that's my stand. And it is my stand until the last breath, my last breath. I assess Muhammad Buhari government in terms of concern about issues related to security, because people are being killed like ants, not only in the northern part of the country. We are not regional bigots. We believe, we are nationalists. We believe in nationalism. We believe in Nigeria's unity. So as far as I'm concerned, I really appreciate the author of the book, his response to Muhammad Buhari during his own remark, whereby he made a statement that you apply for the job and you have the job, and I have no sympathy for you for what is happening. And yes, of course, that is something I have. Because go back to all the clips and all the campaign made by President Muhammad Buhari. You promise providing security. You don't even care. Many people have been killed even around, remember when he received the abducted children of Kankara in his state, Kankara local government, that's the science secondary school, whatever. What was his statement? He was just giving them history, narrations. Is that what they want? And there are other number of killings that have been made heavily. A lot of bloodshed have been made under Buhari administration. So definitely I believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish him for so doing, and will definitely punish him, because no single responsible Nigerian will forgive him. I will never forgive him. I will say it, and I'm repeating myself, that I will never forgive him, because he has no sympathy whatsoever, no concern as far as the bloodshed in northern Nigeria is concerned. The bloodshed, the killing of innocent, the killing, many people are being killed and assassinated silently in southern part of the country, many of the northerners. And why? It is simply because of his inability to have a coordination mechanism.
All right, let's look at solutions. Let's look at, you know, how to really come off this. You know, one of the issues is, some are saying, look, there are other non-violent ways of dealing with this issue. So the president says, well, we are also focusing on treating or solving the problem at its core, talking about, you know, massive infrastructure. So they cited the projects like the coastal rail and new train from the southern coast through the northeast to neighboring Niger. You know, the aim is to expand employment and, you know, create job opportunities, you know, across the country and all of that. How efficient would you say that?
You know, in Hausa language, we normally say that that is a kind of something to laugh on when a child pick a teeth on the street. That he want to, a child of a baby, maybe a child of less than 1 year that is not up to pick a teeth on the street. So, as far as I'm concerned, I became more disappointed when a government, really a serious government that Nigerians elected and suffered to have elected, going by his instruction, Akasa, Atsari, Araka, Ajira, do one day taba kuhalakash, that you should cast your vote, wait at the polling unit, escort the result, and whosoever touch it, kill him. That is instruction. But when he was making his campaign, I have a clip. If you want it, I can play it. I can share it with you. You can play it on there. Everybody can see it. It's not something new. But despite this instruction, despite whatever all the sufferings, many people trekked for very long places. Many marriages, many couples got divorced, because maybe the husband like Buhari and the wife doesn't like Buhari, and many parents send their children away because they don't like, they don't want to vote for Buhari, and many other neighbors had grievances and a lot of enmity, unsolved enmities up till today between neighborhood. But yet, the promises, the empty promises made by Buhari administration wasn't fulfilled in any way.
It's sad.
You promised to provide security. The security issue is zero. We are seeing worse than what it was before you come to the power. You promised to have employment. We are seeing vacancies available, because a large number of people every day are leaving the service, either by death or by age, or by the age of 35 years in service. Daily people are leaving. You say you put Mbogo, and even the employment, we have seen non-transparent employment your government is doing, whereby it is only those who have what is called long leg, or those who have the long hands with a lot of pepper and other ingredients that are getting the white collar jobs. And we have a lot of other applicants, qualified applicants, who are not getting the job. So how can we wrap
up the discussion here, Doctor? Thank you so much.
Buhari administration is a failure. It's an absolute failure.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me. I have my reasons.
This is entirely our guest's opinion and not that of the Daily Trust.
Absolutely. And it remains my opinion.
Thank you so much for coming. We look forward to having you on the program to share your thoughts.
Thank you for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
All right, now there's a special interview conducted by TrustTV with a professor of economics and director of the International Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, Bayero University, Kano, Professor Binta Tejani Jibril, where we had a chat, regarding approaches to, solving some of the economical woes of Nigeria. And, we also had the strategies that government should adopt to enable citizens feel the impact of GDP growth, talking about, the right approaches to doing that. So we'll take a look at that video before we come back and continue the show. Please stay with us.
I enjoyed the meeting. There were robust discussions from members regarding issues relating to the development of the Nigerian economy, and very powerful inputs were given, and the participants were quite knowledgeable of the issues at stake, and at the end of the day I'm quite confident that the resolutions and the inputs given by the board will add value to the discussions on policy as far as the economy is concerned.
That's good. What are you bringing on board as the new chairman of the Daily Trust Board of Economics?
Alhamdulillah, my work has already been laid down for me by the previous chairman and his predecessor. So I'm going to continue in that line. I'm going to continue with what the board has been doing to, give inputs to policy through the Daily Trust, inshallah.
How would you assess the Nigerian economy as it is, given the third quarter GDP report?
Alhamdulillah, from what we have seen, particularly in the third quarter of the year, clearly there is growth. Growth in economics is usually measured by growth in the GDP, the gross domestic product, which has risen by about 4.03%. But the question we always ask as economists is whether this growth is translated into fruits that the common man can actually, enjoy. Growth of GDP does not necessarily mean development. It does not necessarily mean more schools. It does not necessarily mean more hospitals. It does not necessarily mean more food or better food on the table of the common man. And that is what we are experiencing at present in Nigeria. GDP is growing, but the fruits are not quite trickling down appropriately to the citizens because of various challenges which the board discussed. Some of these challenges are, for example, the rising food inflation. Inflation is, we can say, okay, the rate, even though the rate is declining, but in absolute terms, it is still growing. And what is driving that growth is the growing food inflation. Food is becoming more costly by the day, and that is impacting on the general welfare of the common person. And in addition to that, there is growing insecurity, not only in terms of quantum, but also in the terms of the depth of the insecurity and the spatial spread. So all this is affecting the lives of people in Nigeria. And unemployment, especially youth unemployment, is not abating. It is intensifying. So these are issues that contradict, if you like, and dampen the effect of the growth in GDP, and which we hope to see concrete action by government in order to mitigate them, so that the citizens of the country may begin to enjoy the fruits of growth in the economy. Yes.
Okay, Professor, let me take you quickly on this. The 2022 is just by the corner. Given this food inflation you just explained, and even the PIA stipulating the removal of subsidy, what do you think is the outlook for the economy next year?
My assessment as far as the growth outlook of Nigeria is concerned is that it may not change significantly. The notional growth, meaning growth in GDP, may still continue. But I am more concerned about the development of the country. And removal of petroleum subsidy in the short term, of course, we are all going to feel the pinch necessarily, but if robust policies are put in place to, alleviate some of the sufferings that the common man may face, most certainly in the long run, this will be something we'll look back on and say that government has done well. The same thing with the, of course, we are talking about the same issue. The removal of petroleum subsidy is occasioned by the introduction of the petroleum industry bill, which in general I would say is a very good thing. This is something that past governments have been trying to do, and we must congratulate this government for being able to drive it to conclusion. So I see the same trajectory of growth, but the drivers of growth may change with these issues put in place, inshallah.
All right, thank you very much, Prof, for having you on Trust TV.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. I believe that these are ideas on what government can do to ensure that there is growth and that the growth is sustained, even as we've been recording in the past few months there. Speaking with Professor Binta Tijani Jibril, she is Professor of Economics and Director of the International Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance, Barrow University, Kano. Now, we'll quickly go on a quick break, and then when we come back, we'll be talking about persons with disability. There's this 5% employment approval by the president, and then we want to look at how far that has gone. Recall that in late 2018, the president assented to the Persons with Disability Act, which makes certain provisions, and we'll be looking at that shortly after this breather. Please stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us. And if you're just joining, this is Daybreak, reaching you live from the nation's capital in Abuja. And yes, we've been having a lot of conversations, around insecurity and the state of the nation in general. Now, we'll be looking at other issues on the program. Recall that in late 2018, the president assented to the Persons with Disability Act, which made certain provisions, some of which we are going to briefly highlight. Now, first of all, discrimination against persons with disability attracts 100,000 naira fine or at least 6 months imprisonment. Also, in that act, passed into law, there's a prohibition in public transport, that is prohibition in discrimination against persons with disability in public transportation systems, talking about seaports, railways, airports, motor parks, and all of that. One of the provisions also is that 5% employment opportunity should be given with persons living with disability in every organization. And then persons with disability also have the right to file lawsuits against defaulters, against people who they consider, defaulters of the provisions of that law. We also have a 5-year transitional period to modify public structures in favor of persons living with disabilities. So, for instance, where you have staircases and then there's no provision for persons with wheelchairs, it is expected that that building is modified to accommodate people with disability. Also, there's also the issue about conformity of building plans, before approval. So before you get approval for raising any structure in Nigeria, you are supposed to show and demonstrate that your building is taking into consideration persons living with disability before you get approval. Also, defaulters of building codes are to be fined, 1 million naira or 2 years imprisonment, establishment of commission for persons with disability to be headed by an executive secretary. These are some of the provisions of that law passed about 2 years now, or I would say almost 3 years, in place. Now, we have in the studio a lucky pastor, visually impaired person. He is from Inclusive Friends Association, and he'll be talking to us, about these, especially 5% employment for persons living with disability. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's begin with your person, lucky pastor. When I heard the name, it sounds unique because we know pastor to be a title.
Oh yeah,
not a name.
Oh yeah. This is a very common question I answer every day, especially when I go to a new place. People want to know, you're a lucky pastor. Sometimes they want to, they want to change it and say, okay, Pastor Lucky, but I insist it's Lucky Pastor. That's because Pastor is actually my surname. How did the story go? I think my father was giving birth in the church, and his parents decided to call him Pastor.
Oh, wow, interesting.
So that's how the day came about.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Lucky pastor. A pastor who is lucky.
Yes, right.
Yeah. Anyways, that's on the side. Now let's talk about these persons with disability law. Passed some time ago.
Okay.
How far, in your view, have we gone in terms of implementation of some of the provisions of that law?
Well, before I proceed, let me just say this quickly. The fact that after the act was passed, a commission was established to implement these acts. I think it's something to really commend. And that's being put in place. I think right now a large part of the responsibility lies in the hands of the commission to ensure that these things are these provisions in the act are well implemented. Then, to answer your question, I wouldn't say they are well implemented at the moment, because in so many areas, so many of these provisions are still lagging behind. For instance, the discrimination you mentioned. Persons with disability are still being discriminated, even when they try to visit public places, on the road, even the transport system. In virtually every sector of the of Nigeria system, discrimination is still found. Okay, so I wouldn't say the implementation is good, but then I think the commission being put in place, it's a good place to start from in implementing these provisions.
Okay, I think I saw a statement where Ekiti State said that it has implemented 51% employment for people with disabilities. Do you have anything in that regard?
Yeah, I read that not quite long. I read about that. Although that's Ekiti State. Well, I don't live in Ekiti State, but then that brings me to another issue. There is one particular issue we have in Nigeria, which is the issue of statistics. So most of the time we talk about things that have been implemented, people that have been given this, given that, But in most cases, we really do not have accurate numbers. We really don't have accurate data on these things. So oftentimes we say we have 30 million persons with disability in Nigeria, 31 million persons with disability in Nigeria, but then how many persons with disability are duly employed in Nigeria? I don't think we have the statistics, and without this data, it is really very difficult for us to know if we are doing well or we are not doing well. If the commission is actually fighting, or agencies, departments and ministries are actually doing their best to ensure that the 5% is being implemented. So talking about the Ekiti story, I wouldn't know how far the governor or the state has gone in implementing these 5% or the 51% they are trying to claim. But then I think we need statistics in Nigeria to enable us to know how well we have done and how well we still need to do in issues like this.
All right, now in terms of government's own employment and recruitment, would you say that government has taken the lead in terms of implementing some of these provisions by employing some persons with disability? And how exactly where does the commission, for instance, comes in here, the role that the commission plays in ensuring that that is enforced?
Okay, before this act was passed or was accepted by the president, we've had persons with disability gaining employment in different sectors. Now, after the bill was passed, we still have had stories of persons with disability being employed. Okay, but talking about the 5%, I would not say that 5% is really followed as enacted in the act. Now, the reason is, first of all, employment in Nigeria, you and I know, is a very difficult thing. As a matter of fact, people get employed in Nigeria based on the connection they have. Just like the popular saying, long legs, So when, for instance, there is a recruitment going on in a particular agency, and they already know the people they want to employ, then you, as a person with disability, innocently applies for that position, you're not likely to get it because you did not go through the long legs. Okay, so now the issue of employment in general in Nigeria is a very difficult thing. So you need to know someone who knows someone in the system to enable you get a place in that organization. So how many persons with disability would have such connections? They would want to go through merits, but then merits to a large extent in Nigeria do not work anymore because this system is polluted to a greater extent. So people who have the connections might get the employment. But if we look at the provision of 5% and saying if this thing is really being followed the way it is written, I would say no, we are still very, very far behind in that area.
Okay, so would you say there is enough, education and advocacy in regards with the provision, of the act, which is also prompting the way, people are responding, to some of the provisions of this?
Yeah, I would say we have many NGOs who are really doing their best on the part of the government. I don't think there is enough awareness, there is enough education to these effects. But there are a lot of non-governmental NGOs who are really doing their best, like IFA, for instance. If you check, I'm wearing a shirt, but we are doing an advocacy program in IFA currently, trying to sensitize the public about disability-based violence, which also includes this lack of employment we're talking about. Because the system is so structured in a way that people with disability find it difficult to fit in, like getting a job. I know all about getting a job, really. When you get a job, are there provisions, are there things put in place to enable you function in that office? Because we might say, okay, give them 5%, and they are given. When they get the job, what would they do? Are they giving that provision? Are they giving that enabling environment to really excel or do what they should do as people working in an organization? So all of these are the things you consider, because disability really is not all about the health condition. It's sometimes, in fact, in most times, extends to societal attitude towards the person living with disability. For instance, if you recruit a soldier and say go and fight insurgency, and this soldier goes to the field without a gun, without ammunition, automatically the system has already disabled the soldier from carrying out his duties. So same thing applies. When you give a person with disability a job, you need to also provide the enabling environment for him or her to be able to carry out that assignment you are giving them. Okay. And that includes what we call inclusive budgeting. When you're budgeting for an organization, you should have this in mind, that okay, we're going to have people with disability in our organization, so we need to provide things that will enable them function in this organization. So all of these things are the things needed to make this a reality in Nigeria. So I would say really that the education for the side of the non-governmental organization is fine. We are doing our best to make sure that this thing goes around. But I think the government still need to be involved in creating awareness and educating the public about these things and how they should implement them.
All right. Now, the provision, one of the provision of the law is that it empowers, persons with disability to go to court and take defaulters to court. So, if, for instance, you're applying for a job and you believe you have all the merits and all of that, for some reason, you are discriminated against, you can approach the court and say, hey, I have applied for this job and I'm being discriminated against. How much of that have you done, or have we seen, from FIA or IFA people you work with?
Okay, let me first of all ask this question. If an individual goes for an interview in a government organization, for instance, say NNPC or say NCC or any of these government organizations, okay? First of all, the question would be, what would be your evidence to show that you merited this job and you were not given? Is the recruitment process that open for you to know that you actually did very well but you were not given the job? So you see, there is actually a setback when it comes to that. The other day, Federal Road Safety or one of these paramilitary posted an advert for recruitment and clearly stated that persons with disability are not allowed to apply. And I think Citizens for Center for Citizens with Disability took it up and took them to court. Really, I don't even know how that case ended, because they've already from the beginning discriminated against persons with disability. But what I'm saying is, it is really difficult to really say you want to stand up and go and say, okay, you were discriminated by not getting a job in a particular organization, because the process is not open for you to really know how well you did that made it impossible for you to get a job. So I think this is where the commission comes in. Okay, so whenever there is a recruitment anywhere, what I expect is that the commission should be fully involved, so that at the end of the recruitment, they can get statistics and say, okay, so amount of persons were recruited in this organization this year or so time, and out of the 500 100 persons that were recruited, 5 persons or 20 persons are persons with disability. This will help the system to be transparent. But if you say an individual should just stand up and take the case to court and say, oh, I was discriminated, but I didn't get a job I merited, it will be very difficult. But then, which individual really can fight against an organization? So all of these things, you and I know the court, the judiciary system in Nigeria in most times it does not really favor the ordinary person. It may be difficult, on individual basis, right? But then you have civil society organizations, of course, NGOs, and organizations like yours. Have you considered, maybe adopting something like that? Of course. When we are also open to cases like this. So we always make it clear that whenever there is a such case of discrimination, that you have been discriminated, okay, you can as well reach out to IFA and they will take it up from there. So that is in place already. But I'm only saying this because many individuals get discouraged when they look at the system and how things are being done, okay. But then we are still saying that the commission is there, IFA and other organizations, they are there. You can easily run out to and lay your complaints let them know how the areas you've been discriminated, and they'll come in.
Okay, so talk to us about also areas of collaboration between this commission and groups like yours, IFA and other civil society organization that, you know, wants to protect the interests of people with disability. How is that collaboration going, if there's any?
Well, for one, I don't work with the commission, and I really cannot say much about the relationship within the commission and other organizations to see how well it's really going, because like I said, I don't work with the commission, so I don't really know how many organizations have written to them for partnership, how many organizations have tried to collaborate with them in order to make these things possible. But then I want to believe that the commission should be open to people or organizations who are willing to carry out such collaborations and make sure that the provisions of the acts are well implemented.
So now, as a person, you know, living with disabilities, what are some of the strategies you advocate for, you know, to government to put in place?
First of all, I would say that I remember I said at the beginning that setting up the commission is a very beautiful step and a very good thing the government has done. Now, it's not left for the commission. As a matter of fact, the ES, which is executive secretary of that commission, is a person with disability. So he understands the pain. Okay, these challenges we are facing, he understands. So I expect that the commission, having been established by the government, should be able to make sure we're talking about employment. And I mentioned that this commission should be involved in recruitment in different government organizations, so that whenever there is something going wrongly, there will be a clear picture. You would know that, okay, yes, something is going on wrongly here, because since the head of this organization is a person with disability, and if we cannot carry out this thing with all manner of passion, then it means we are not even helping ourselves as persons with disability. Because it will be like you've been given the opportunity to help yourself, but you're not helping yourself. So I really expect that the commission, having been set, should be given a free hand to operate, you know, so that they can carry out their duties and make sure that organizations, individuals, whatever, they carry out the provisions in the Act judiciously, so that there will be no issue of people still crying here and there, no employment, no social inclusion, and all of that, you know. So I will still say it again, that the commission is a very good start, but then they should be given free hand to operate.
All right, now what are some of the impediments, you know, that you experience in public places? Because yes, the provision, some of the provision is that public buildings, you know, should be, you know, modified and be raised in such a way that it accommodates persons with disability. What are some of the things that are missing, you know, that you see in our public structures, and what are the things that you look out for and what you expect?
Well, you know, the government gave 5 years transition period for buildings to make sure they are accessible and all of that. So currently, I still say that there are a lot of buildings that are inaccessible by persons with disability. Church buildings, public buildings, and all that. There are some buildings you would go, maybe no provision of the elevator even, so you have to climb the staircase. So when someone on a wheelchair gets to that environment, he or she would find it difficult to access, you know. So in this area, there's still a very big challenge. Now, talking about our road networks, there are areas in Abuja, for instance, that when I get as a visually impaired person, I will be so stranded. I will be so stranded to the point that I will have to depend on someone to assist me before I can proceed with my journey to wherever I'm going to. But then there are still areas that I can easily navigate with my guide, my guide cane, you know. So I would say that this issue of accessibility should be taken more seriously by ensuring that the roads, not just in Abuja, all over the country, are built in a way that visually impaired persons, persons on wheelchair will be able to access without needing help from anyone. Because, like I mentioned earlier, disability has different disabling processes. You know, one of those processes is the personality factor. Yes, it is true that some persons with disability do not have that confidence to really carry out things by themselves, just because they feel they are incapacitated, you know. But apart from that, we still have the environmental factor. You know, you want to go to a place, but the environmental structure does not give you permission to go to that particular place, or give you the room to thrive in that particular environment. So you become stranded. So it will compare you now with someone who has the same disability with you, but is living in an environment that is well accessible. You will observe that that person will be doing far better than yourself that is living in an environment that is not accessible. So you see, that environmental factor alone has further disabled the individual from carrying out his duty. We also have the attitudinal factor, attitudes of people. There was a day actually, I wanted to go somewhere really. So the bike guy stopped me by the road. But I didn't know that where I was standing was actually the middle of the streets where bikes and cars were entering. You know, at the point I discovered that some will pass by my left, some will pass by my right. So I became conscious. I was like, are you sure I'm not standing on, in the middle of the road? But, you know, I was so hurt that day, and the reason is this. All the people that passed me on the way, none of them could even say, ah, bros, you are standing at the middle of the road. Please come to the side of the road. They all were passing me, those on foot, those on bikes, those in their cars, and all of that. So I was like, am I the one thinking I'm standing on the wrong path? Someone should have said, why not stand by the side? Yeah. Until one bike guy came, and this one came so arrogantly, and he hit me with the handle of his bike. I said, "Leave the road, my friend." At that point, I was so hurt. I had to just try my best to move to the side of the road.
And
I felt so.
And you could see
that you were with my cane. I wasn't holding my cane. I was standing with my cane. And I was like, have we really got to this point where people don't show concern about people anymore? You know, you see someone standing on the middle of the road, and it's very dangerous for him, and you could even see him with a cane. You could not even say, okay, oh bros, why not just shift to the side of the road? So what I'm saying is the attitude of people towards persons with disability is becoming unbecoming, really, because probably they are thinking maybe he's just standing there to beg. Probably that's their intent, that's their mindset, their perception about me when I was standing on the road. But they never knew that I was stranded or I was kept there wrongly.
That's quite sad indeed.
That's, you know, very unfortunate. Really.
So these are the issues we're facing in the country, really. So I think we really need more awareness about these things.
Well, I guess that's why we're having this discussion, and that goes to our viewers as well. Next time you see
be nice and reach out,
or you see someone with disability, just be kind enough to, you know, show
that's just all. They always assume that you want to collect money. You know, that's the first impression they get when they see you standing. But in most cases, what these people need really is just probably an assistance to cross the road, or an assistance to get a bike or get a taxi, or better still, an assistance to get to the direction they are really going to. Not necessarily asking you to give them anything.
Well, thank you so much for coming, Lucky Pastor, to the program, and we hope to have you next time.
Thank you very much for having me.
You're welcome. All right, we'll now take a breather, and when we come back, the show will continue. Please stay with us.
Right now, let's take a bit of sports. The Nigeria Football Federation has terminated Gernot Rohr's contract as the Super Eagles coach. Subsequently, the Football Federation appointed Augustine Eguavoh, currently its technical director, as the technical advisor of the Super Eagles on an interim basis. And we have our sports producer and Trust and TV correspondent in the studio, Adenia Dishafi, to give us perspectives on this. Welcome to the program.
Well, thanks for having me. It's time to talk sport briefly. Well, I think the issue of Gernot Rohr, I will call it LOD, long overdue, and we're just the way the issue is going, the angle where it's coming from my own side is that what's next? What are we going to do about our football? Okay, Gernot Rohr is gone now. Finally, yesterday they were able to agree, but via the virtual meeting they had online, that's okay. This match just go. Let's see what we can do. That's why they brought in Augustine Eguavoh, the former Super Eagles defender, captain, and also technical director of the so that is the Super Eagles. But as it is now that he has been appointed as interim manager of that team, they are alongside others like Joseph Yobo, assistant coach, Salisu Yusuf will be the chief coach. You have other like Dr. Terry, also part of them. Not forgetting Aloysius Agu, who will be the goalkeeper trainer. We also have Kanu Wanko and JJ Okocha, who will be as ambassadorial role, and also they'll be giving some technical advice. But we look at now the NFF finally parting with Gernot Rohr. What happened that it took this long for him to have stayed for 64 months? You understand? As our is he technical advisor, you want to call it, or coach, or
so before you talk about what happened, maybe just give us a sense of the performance of Gernot Rohr, as Nigeria's coach. What's your assessment?
Okay, I think to some extent, the deal they had, the NFL with Gernot Rohr, is okay, take us to AFCON, let's win AFCON, and also to the World Cup, thereabout, if you can. For as it is right now, if you look at his performance, I won't rule him out that he has not done well to some extent. But it's just that if you look at the Super Eagles, till now you cannot mention the first 11 of Nigerian Super Eagles. Normally, if I take you back to 1994, 1996, even a young child can mention like 6 players, that are regular players that can say, okay, Nigerian Super Eagles first 11. But right now, it's either we play a particular player for this match, and the next one we change it again and we'll play another one, and that inconsistency really affected our team, because you cannot say this is our first 11. And then the issue of countries that play Nigeria, the way Super Eagles play recently, you will look at, is this Nigerian Super Eagles that whenever any country, even outside Africa, wants to play Nigeria, they are always up to their best because they know the country they are coming against. But lately, if countries like Central African Republic could summon courage enough to withstand us, even shock us, if countries like Congo, a lot of countries are beginning to, we can do this against the Super Eagles, you understand? So to some extent, and I want to say this, is high time, who says Nigerian coaches cannot do this job? After all, the late Keshi actually won the AFCON for Nigeria.
Okay, so with Augustine's status and all of that, do you think there's going to be a positive outcome in the forthcoming Africa Cup of Nations come January to
There
February?
should be, but there will be instances where that can actually work. One, they should allow them to, okay, you are the interim manager alongside all other people I've mentioned earlier, allow them to do their job. Interference here and there at times brings a lot of backwardness. Allow them to, so far you have appointed them, right? Give them the chance to work. And who says the interim can become the manager, finally? And I just hope that the entire crew will work together to achieve, because at times when you have too much people on the crew, you have a lot of individual differences that will be coming in now, ego and all that. But if they have a minimum amount of people, maybe 2 or 3 or 4, because this time around I mentioned like 6 names now, and I hope it will be coming like, oh, this one will be saying his own, that one will be saying his own, and they won't have a united house.
Okay, now let's talk about the psyche, of football. having a coach that have stayed this long. You mentioned he's one of the longest
64
serving
months,
coaches.
yes.
You know, 4 months. You know, what's the impact, you know, on the psyche of the players, you know, as regards team spirit, and with the incoming one that is coming, is virtually new, and there's a whole lot of tasks ahead of them, you know. So talk to us about how they will be able to adjust, you know.
Well, first of all, the players might feel psychologically they've been with Ganoro for a very long time. Those players that has been playing with him, so it will take some time before they will get Ganoro out of their mind. 1, 2, although they are professional players, they are used to changing coaches abroad too. But for Augustine Eguavoen and the entire technical crew, I think they've been with them for some time. Because you remember, he was the technical director of the team before being appointed as interim manager. Joseph Yobo has been there as assistant coach, so they know that okay, these guys have been with us. So it's not as if they are just coming overnight. They've been with them, just that position changes now, from technical director to interim manager. Yobo maintains assistant coach. They are used to
a new relationship is going to be now introduced, because this time around they are relating more of coach and
so now it's now be okay. Before we're seeing as our TD, technical director, but now we're seeing as our interim manager. So power has actually changed hand. And you look at, I love the fact that they drafted in JJ and Kanu, or Joe on another level, ambassadorial and also technical advice thereabout. But to some extent, just look at what happened in Cameroon on Friday. You understand how on Friday, Saturday, when Samuel Eto'o was able to be elected as the president of FECAFOOT, that is Cameroon Federation, Football Federation. He has been elected, a former player.
Okay, now what kind of impact do you say, you know, having managers that stay for long, what kind of impact does it have on players? Is it a positive impact?
Because of the fact that, well, it depends. You look at if the coach and the players, they've been succeeding together. You understand? It might have a positive effect there to get off with another person. And if it's negative one, they might be like, after all, he's gone. Let's wait for who is coming. That's the way it is. And for Ganoro and the Super Eagles players, I think to some extent, you know, it's more of the foreign players coach. He doesn't really believe in Nigerian players at the home base. So he believes the foreigners will always do the job. And now the foreigners should just be at their best, because now things have changed. Although we know that most of them will still be called, but they should know that these are players that they play the football. Eguavoen, Yobo, mention all of them. You understand? All of them play the football, so they know the business. You cannot just come over now and begin to claim one big boy for them. They were there before you. They know what it takes. They too smell that big money. They spend it. That's it. So I just hope that issue of indiscipline can be curtailed this time around, issue of indiscipline, and also the serious mindedness are coming to the Super Eagles, because it's high time the Super Eagles should know that it's a privilege to be there to play for Nigeria. Do you know how many players that plays outside Nigeria or here in Nigeria that you are called to come and wear the green, white, green color? Is a privilege. Don't think it's your right. So I wish Eguavoen and the entire crew can let them have that sight on their head. Anytime you are given the opportunity, play well. Don't humanism. Messi, Ronaldo, Cristiano Ronaldo, these guys earn the money that the entire Super Eagles, when you join it together, the money they earn, you can do the maths. They earn it in maybe in 2 months or thereabout. You understand? And they are still ready to go for Argentina or for Portugal. Anytime they are called upon to play, they want to sacrifice themselves. So how come Nigerian Super Eagles players, okay, because you have signed with a big club in Europe, that doesn't mean you are now you have arrived. You can no longer bow. No, you can still bow. It's
about nationalism.
Exactly. After all, you are riding on the back of the national team.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Daybreak, Adini Adishafe. It's been quite interesting, you know, speaking to you about sports.
Thank you. Well, with that, we will wrap up the Daybreak show today. It's been quite a very, very interesting time on the program. In case you've missed, you can always catch up on our YouTube and also connect with us on our various social media platforms. With that, we'll say bye to you. Join us again tomorrow for another time on the program. I am Ayuba Ilya.
And I'm Zainab Bala. Have a lovely day.
Bye.